One of the biggest obstacles preventing the moto-curious from taking the leap to becoming fully fledged motorcyclists is the cost of entry. You gotta pay for an MSF course, get riding gear, pay for insurance, and of course, purchase the bike itself. And if you're thinking about buying a beginner bike at a dealership, you're gonna end up spending at least $7,000 or $8,000 out the door for a beginner bike when it's all said and done. So today I'm going to talk about the 7 top affordable beginner bikes that are inexpensive, reliable, and will serve as a great platform for a cost-conscious rider's first foray into motorcycling. Burgeoning sport bike aficionados may be familiar with the current tier of small displacement sport bikes made available to new riders. Yamaha has their R3, Honda has the CBR 300R, and Kawasaki has the venerable Ninja 400, which has been eclipsed by the new Ninja 500. But for a rider who's looking to save big on some coin and willing to compromise for an older workhorse model, there is no need to look much further than the Ninja 300. Before the Ninja 400 was released in 2018, the Ninja 300 has served as Kawasaki's small displacement sport bike since 2012. This bike is powered by a 296cc parallel twin engine making 39 horsepower and 18 foot-pounds of torque, which are power figures that still rival some of the beginner bikes that are currently still in production by the competition. Like many smaller Ninja models, the Ninja 300 has comfortable ergonomics that are great for commuting and daily riding and can help provide a lot of confidence in a new rider. But with those agreeable ergos, you will still have the sporty, fully fared look of a Japanese sport bike. The Ninja 300 is a workhorse machine, a product of the last generation of beginner bikes that were designed to be comfortable, inexpensive, and easy to own, which is a bit of a stark contrast to the current ranks of beginner bikes where manufacturers have taken a bit more of a maximalist approach. New beginner sport bikes are pushing power levels and are pumped full of superfluous tech that ultimately results in a more premium price point and more failure points as well. When it comes to beginner bikes, you just need a bike that's safe, reliable, and easy to ride so you can rack up miles and experience before ultimately moving on to something bigger or better in a year or two. So don't think that the Ninja 500 is going to be drastically better or different than a Ninja 300. Yeah, sure, it's got a little bit more power and poke, and yeah, it looks a little bit more updated, but fundamentally, it's still a small displacement sport bike, and they've been making those basically the same for the past 15 years. So there's no need to blow your wad on a beginner bike because it has flashy farkles or a TFT display when you can get a Ninja 300 for $3,000 or less, run it mercilessly without issue, and hold on to that coin for a different bike later on. And guess what? That Ninja 300 is going to be worth exactly what you paid for it a year from now, assuming you don't bin it. Ninja 300s can be found in just about every market. They're super cheap and they should suit any beginner rider perfectly. I've often sang my praises of small displacement dual sport motorcycles as an ideal choice for many new riders. And in fact, if I could go back in time and do it all over again, that's what I would pick. In fact, I'm actually thinking of doing a video series where I pick one of these up and show you guys what it would look like for actually you to do as a beginner motorcycle. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that video series. I'd like to call it the Cheapskate Beginner Bike Challenge. Could be fun. They're lightweight, incredibly comfortable to own, and can provide a lot of room in the saddle for bigger riders who may be too large on a traditional beginner bike. Not to mention the ability to experience multiple disciplines of riding on one machine can open up a whole new world of riding. You can get seat time in urban environments, take it out on some backcountry roads, and even cut your teeth on some light off-road duty. A small displacement dual sport is a motorcycle that can earn a piece in your stable long after you've leveled up from beginner status, and they're super easy to work on too. If you start on a beginner sport bike or a naked bike, chances are you'll have no reason to hold on to your first bike after you outgrow it. Whereas a dual sport bike will continue to provide smiles for miles and allow you to explore off-road riding or light adventure duty. And that's well after you've moved on to a larger and faster bike. Honda's CRF 300L is an awesome choice for a beginner dual sport, but being a Honda, they still demand a substantial asking price, even in the used market. But luckily, you've got another option. Honda made the CRF 250L dual sport from 2012 through 2020, and many can be still found for a bargain since they've surpassed by the 300L in recent years. These bikes make around 24 horsepower and 17 foot-pounds of torque from the 250cc thumper, and this bike has decently long legs from a 250cc dirt bike thanks in part to the 6-speed transmission. They weigh about 320 pounds, which should make these bikes very manageable for most despite the 34-inch seat height. They're also very narrow through the tank, so you can easily lean this thing over when you're at a stop and it's not going to be too hard to flat foot. The 250L also comes in a rally trim like the new 300L does, which provides a larger gas tank, a fairing, and a rally windscreen. And depending on the model year, a CRF 250L can go for between $3,000 and $5,000. I honestly think these are sleeper hits. I know a lot of people look at the 300Ls as a vast improvement over the 250s, but if you're not that concerned about outright performance, which again, it's a street biased dual sport, it's not a big deal, the 250L is going to be a fantastic hit. The Honda Shadow is a cruiser motorcycle that takes many design cues from its American counterparts and were even produced in Honda's Marysville, Ohio factory for a while. The Shadow name has been attributed to various models since the mid-1980s, and it's still a bike produced by Honda to this day. It's a motorcycle that has become ubiquitous amongst metric cruisers, and many riders have either owned a Shadow or known somebody who has. The Shadow's been sold in countless displacements and variations of the last 40 years, but the 745cc V-twin models made in the last 15 years are a great option for a rider who wants a classic retro cruiser with a super affordable price and Honda reliability. While being bigger than what you might typically expect to be considered a beginner bike, the Honda Shadow is very much akin to a Harley-Davidson Sportster. The engine makes just 45 horsepower but puts out 47 foot-pounds of torque, giving it a nice low-end grunt. These bikes, while being retro in style, do have some modern conveniences like fuel injection and liquid cooling, and certain models even had ABS. Like I said, the Shadow's been built in many configurations over the years, but some common models are the Shadow Phantom, Aero, and Sprint, each offering different styling and design choices built around the same frame and engine. If you're into a low-slung, low-profile cruiser, a Honda Shadow is really hard to beat. They've been built forever, and parts are super easy to come by, and they're cheap as all hell too. Honda built like a billion of these, and they were basically all used as beginner bikes. You can find Shadows all day for like $1,800. And cruisers are interesting for beginners too because the growth trajectory as a rider is different. If you're attracted to this style, sound, and grunt of a V-twin cruiser, a Shadow is comfortable enough for a beginner to start on, but you might not necessarily outgrow it in the same way sport bike riders outgrow their bikes. If you like just cruising around town or on some country roads, you can start on a Shadow and then ride it season after season before really feeling like you need or want something else. If you ask any rider what the sort of ideal beginner bike is in regards to price, power, and reliability, many will be quick to say the SV650. And that's not without reason. The SV has been produced in almost continuously since 1999, and it created much of the framework many manufacturers still follow in developing naked motorcycles. It's got comfortable ergonomics, a torquey and characterful engine, and a broad approachability that almost every rider can enjoy. You can commute, you can hit the twisties, you can do light touring, or you can even hit a track day, but maybe less praised but equally suited for a budget-conscious beginner is the V-Strom 650. If you're looking to spend more time doing touring and long distance, or maybe some light adventure riding instead of the sporty stuff, the V-Strom could be better suited to your needs than the SV. The V-Strom and SV650 share the same 645cc V-twin, though in slightly different states of tune. The V-Strom makes 66 horsepower and 45 foot-pounds of torque, which definitely lands itself in the beginner plus category a bit. But with the right training and a bit of patience, there's no reason why either bike should be prohibitively powerful for a beginner. The V-Strom has a non-adjustable Showa fork, but the Showa rear shock has rebound and preload adjustability. It rolls on a 19 and 17-inch tire setup, its fairing and windshield allow for touring comfort, and there's plenty of options for luggage. And when buying a used V-Strom 650, you can almost guarantee it was owned by a responsible older dude who not only cared for it, but outfitted it in some nice touring accessories, which is a bit of a contrast to a used SV650, which can be kind of a crapshoot. Some SV650s are mint, while some are just cursed and wretched, crashed and rebuilt 100 times over. They always still run, but they can be a little crusty. Sport touring bikes and beginner ADV bikes can often run a pretty penny, so a used V-Strom 650 is a way to get your foot in the door without breaking the bank. And since Suzuki's transitioning to the parallel twin engine found in the GSX 8S and V-Strom 800, the V-twin models have a bit of vintage charm at this point. Depending on the model year, you can find a V-Strom 650 for as cheap as $3,000 or up to $5,000 or $6,000 for a more recent model. What has 3 cylinders, an Öhlins rear shock, and enough torque to rotate the earth beneath you? Why, it's the MT-09 SP giveaway bike on YamiNoob.co, of course. We finally have one of these as a giveaway, and you're not going to want to miss it. Head over to the website and get 10x entries for every dollar you spend. We've got hats, t-shirts, keychains, but best of all, I recommend becoming a member to join our community and get automatic entries to win. You can stack them up and apply them to giveaways, and they never expire. We have some amazing bikes coming up that you're not going to want to miss. 3-day giveaways, top shelf
12 liter bikes, and much more to round out this year. So head over to yamanoob.co and get 10x entries to win the MT09 SP giveaway.
KTM's always pushing the boundaries for value-driven beginner bikes since their partnership with Bajaj. While a Duke 390 and RC 390 are already some of the most feature-packed beginner bikes on the market, they are also some of the cheapest to purchase. With a brand new MSRP of under $6,000, you can sometimes find dealerships selling brand new models from previous years for just shy of $5,000 at the end of riding season. A used Duke 390 or RC 390 from 2018 or 19 can cost just $4,500 from a private seller. For a long time, the two bikes were kind of the most exciting beginner sport or naked bikes, offering a fun, novel experience thanks to the 371cc single cylinder that makes 43 horsepower and 26 foot-pounds of torque. KTM was also one of the earliest manufacturers to put modern tech into their beginner bikes with things like LED lights and TFT displays and switchable supermoto modes that disable rear-wheel ABS. The RC390 is the fully fared version of the Duke, which uses a stiffer frame and offers more adjustability in the front suspension. But the Duke will have more comfortable ergonomics and will be easier to service without being ensconced in plastics. I've had plenty of first-hand experiences with these bikes and have always thoroughly enjoyed their novel riding experiences compared to some of their sleepy beginner bike counterparts. Brand new Duke 390 and RC390s are already a pretty good bargain with the amount of features you get, and if you're able to find an older model year at a dealership or a well-cared-for used model, they're even cheaper to purchase. But keep in mind, some of these early year Duke 390s and RC 390s are not the most reliable motorcycles. Most notably, they had a lot of head gasket issues. So if you want worry-free, I would definitely stick to Japanese and probably just Honda. And everybody knows the Triumph Bonneville. It's one of the most classic and timeless motorcycles ever built. And outside of retro charm, one of the many allures of a bike as timeless as a Bonnie is you can find a used model for pennies on the dollar. And that's going to provide a riding experience not all dissimilar from one of the more modern counterparts. Much like a cruiser, like a Sportster or a Shadow, the Bonneville T100 as a motorcycle, while offering a larger displacement, is still manageable for a beginner rider if you can tolerate the weight. The Bonneville T100 has been made since 2002. It originally had an air-cooled 790cc parallel twin that was bumped to 865 in 2005 and then 900cc's in 2017. The sweet spot for purchasing an affordable Bonnie is the second gen that ran from 2005 to 2016, where models from the late 2010s can be found for under $5,000. The 865cc twin makes 67 horsepower and 54 foot-pounds of torque, which again puts it in the beginner plus category, but because of the nature of this engine architecture and the weight of the machine, it doesn't pose anywhere near the risk of a sport bike would if it made that kind of power but weighed 100 pounds less. The Bonnie is another one of those bikes you can start on with the right amount of training and theoretically keep it forever, because in the world of air-cooled classic roadsters, is it really worth trading up to a bike that makes 10 more horsepower? You know, that isn't really why people like these bikes. They ride them for the charm and the nostalgia, so there's less of a need to try to maximize power per dollar or get the latest and greatest. Bonnevilles are super classic and really created the modern retro genre. Triumph really does it better than anybody, and they've been doing it for longer too. And the second gen Bonnie actually had some of those issues from that first reboot back in the early 2000s ironed over a little bit, so those are really the ones to get. They're simple machines with a timeless allure. They can be found for pretty cheap. Now, the last one on the list, we're looking at the humble Versys 300. If you're just looking for a motorcycle in its most basic form, two wheels, an engine, and not much else to spend on anything, a Versys 300 is kind of hard to beat. You won't have the sporty looks or fancy tech, but you'll be able to ride for miles and miles with ease and zero issues of maintenance or reliability. The Versys 300 is Kawasaki's entry-level sport touring / very, very light adventure style motorcycle that uses the same 296cc twin from the Ninja 300 we talked about earlier. It has a super relaxed upright riding position, a lightweight form factor, and plush long travel suspension. Look, you're not going to be competing in the Dakar on this thing, but you can have some fun on some local gravel roads for sure. And with a windscreen and some luggage, you can see the world from the saddle of a Versys. It's going to take you a little bit to get there, sure, but nonetheless, you'll be getting there. And again, these puppies are cheap. I see a 2017 with 3,000 miles for less for $3,000, or a 2020 for $3,500. Nobody wants these things. It's not the most glamorous motorcycle, but it's a comfortable and functional bike that's going to get you riding without breaking the bank. All right, boys, thanks so much for making all the way to the end of the video today. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We got tons of great content tailored specifically to help people like you get on two wheels. If there's something you need to know about getting into motorcycles, we're bound to cover it if we haven't already. Thanks again for watching and supporting what we do here on the channel. I'll catch you all later. Fact: in ancient Egypt, servants were smeared with honey so flies would flock to them instead of the pharaoh. Goodbye. Well, that's it. That's the end of the video. And you might be saying, woo, what's that spicy little meatball right there next to you? This is the MT09 SP And in case you live under a rock, it's our newest giveaway bike, and I am ridiculously excited about it. This thing is the best, in my opinion. There's no better street bike. It's awesome. So head over to yamanoob.co, become a member, and get access to win this motorcycle. It could show up right there in your driveway. But as you sit there and debate which membership option is going to be right for you, click the link right over here and keep watching some sweet Yamanoob. We have thousands of videos, I think. 2,000? 1,500? We have a ton of videos. Go and check them out.